Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Bible Thumper Podcast. My name is Patrick Hayes, your regular host, and with me this evening is Zachariah King.
Yeah.
And we are going to be talking about welfare, homelessness, and Christianity. So I had a friend of mine come and ask me if we could go over this subject a little while ago. I don't even remember who it was. But the reason they brought it up is they said, Patrick, we have a serious homeless problem here in Grand Junction, Colorado. Would you agree?
Part of town that I hang out in sure does.
And he said, I'm struggling because as a Christian, I'm wondering, what am I supposed to be doing here? You know, can anyone give me some direction as far as, what, as a Christian, what are my responsibilities? How am I supposed to help? What am I doing that's right, wrong, good, bad? And is anything making a difference? He had a lot of questions.
Sure.
And really, he said, could you just get into it? So, all right, Zach, let me start off. I got a lot of questions for you. I'm going to tell you.
And I don't know what any of them are either.
You don't know what any of them are, but I will tell you when I'm setting you up with a question.
You want me to go ahead and just fall into some traps for you?
No. I mean, you can if you want. I just mean that there are several questions that I really don't know the answer to, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Sure.
And then there are other questions where I think I clearly know the answer. I have my answer ready, scripture to back it up, locked and loaded, ready to go.
Yeah.
Don't fall into the trap.
Shoot.
Okay.
Yeah, and just blow me down with them. Sure.
Okay, so let's start with this. Does God want the Christian to take care of the poor?
Does God want the Christian to take care of the poor? Yes.
Okay.
I would say. But I don't know if I want to get into this just right off the bat.
What are you thinking?
Well, just the word poor itself gives you so many different places to go.
My next two questions. That's one of them.
Okay. Yes.
What is the poor? Because the biggest problem when we're going over any subject is we don't define terms, and then you have people from opposing views talking past each other because we didn't start out with a foundation.
Because I'm thinking to myself, okay, what I mean by poor is a widow whose children don't respect her anymore because dad's gone.
Yep.
They try to take advantage of her and have access to her bank account. And she's part of my church.
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, yeah, duh.
Yeah.
Of course.
Gotta help her.
But somebody else is thinking, a guy down the street who I tried to buy a hamburger for, he said to me, no thanks. I don't need a hamburger. I'm trying to buy some drugs. And if you're not going to give me money, cash, I'm going to come pee in your house. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, so immediately just the word poor.
Yeah.
When you have two different images in your mind.
Yes.
I'm 100% with you. Define the terms so that we understand what we're all talking about. Because the word poor just in itself.
Yeah. It's so broad and we have to narrow it down some. Okay. So now I was going to ask that question second. Do you hear a little hiss, like a little high pitched whine? Okay. Then it's probably just my headphones. I just wanted to make sure you weren't hearing it too, so it's not being recorded. Okay. So
I don't.
That's fine. We're probably fine. So the first question I wanted to go over is, or I should say, the first term I wanted to define is take care of. Right? Because we said, does God want the Christian to take care of the poor? So the poor, I think, is the bulk of our conversation today. I think that's where we're going to get into most of it.
But let's start at the start.
So I wanted to kind of define what I think is a shorter part, and that is take care of. So if we're going to have this discussion, we need a goal we're trying to reach. Okay, so what is that goal? When we say take care of,
so
what are we saying?
We do the work in Kenya. We've got the girls in the house. Had an awesome golf tournament yesterday, by the way. Thanks, man.
Okay, so start off back one or two steps. Yes. Some people don't know what you're talking about, even though I do.
So she has a name. Blythe was on the podcast.
Month
couple
ago?
months
Months ago,
ago,
yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, she has a name. It's the name of the charity.
Yep, she has a name info. So mostly orphaned, but not entirely, but always poor.
Always poor.
Teenage girls in Kenya. So what do we provide for them? Housing, food, school, insurance, clothing. It's like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs thing, like shelter, food, warmth, covering.
Now one thing I want to throw in there though is we're into a little bit of a specific group, which is minors.
Yes.
Okay, totally different than adults.
Or if you have a widow who already owns a house.
Sure.
So what I would start with though is I would say take care of, at least to some degree, the people that we know the Bible commands us to take care of. Widows, orphans.
No. We're not dealing with people.
No, we're not dealing with any people yet.
What is taken care of? That's it. Not the people.
Needs.
Okay.
I would
give me your list.
What's your start there?
Top 3, top 5, whatever.
Food.
Okay.
Right.
Nobody dies of hunger.
Food.
Okay.
Yep. Shelter.
Nobody dies of exposure. Okay, I'm with you.
I think really, really quickly, you move from there to like training, teaching, educating, training how to work a job, something in that level. So again, just being as broad as you can, because there's lots of, like, I could take care of my kids, a different way I take care of orphans or orphans, which is a different way I take care of the widows in the church. But I would start with, where are you going to sleep? What are you going to eat?
And what I had written down is no one dies of hunger, no one dies of exposure. And what I'm now bear with me, because we're going to add to this, but I'm going to start with, that's it. That's what has to be when we're talking about, does God want the Christian to take care of the poor? When we say take care of, we have to have a starting point, and that's got to be it. Okay, we're preserving life. Because the concern for me, and keep in mind, we're talking about in America, is that the goal cannot be the median or average income in your area and providing the poor with that. Right? Because all of a sudden, that is going to be unsustainable for a community, a church, a government. I mean, there's no way that we're going to be able to do that. And this is an idea that I don't think is very palatable, but I think it's a good starting point. And that is that when we're talking about taking care of the poor, the level of provision is going to start at a pretty bleak and depressing and unenjoyable level, but it's better than dying of starvation and dying of exposure. Okay, so can we say, right? Because I think the problem is when we talk about the spectrum of what we're going to try to bring the poor up to when we provide, we're starting with, we're going to make sure they're alive. We're going to make sure they're not cold. We're going to make sure, they're not hungry.
Sure.
Okay. But then are we going to say, well, I mean, Zach, the poor need air conditioning.
Well, I think there's a couple steps even before that, though. What about medication? Like that one's really, really, that one can be tough. If you can't prove your identity, but you have a prescription medication that we're supposed to, like, I think that could be difficult. If you live in another town, what's the story about transportation? I think there's a couple steps along the way where, of course, I'm a shades of gray guy.
Yeah.
And
I'm the black and white guy.
So I'm with you to begin with, for sure, though.
Yeah.
Like,
I want to start with, this is what we have to provide. Here's my issue. This is what I'm saying. I understand you need more than these things. No one's saying that you don't need more. What I'm saying is, what am I obligated to provide? Okay. We can work on more,
Yes.
but can we say that if we can start with, and we haven't gotten to who the poor is yet, but if we can say that the people God wants us to help, we are going to make sure that they are fed and clothed, they are warm when it's cold outside, they are not going to die of heat stroke. Okay. That's where we're starting. I understand there are lots and lots of things
Oh,
for an
yeah.
enjoyable, fulfilling life, but there is no way, there's not enough dollars in the world to get everyone in need up to the level of a middle class American. It just doesn't exist if we are solely responsible and they have no responsibility in it.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's,
So that's going to move us on to number 2.
yes.
So we're going to be able to weed out a lot of people when we talk about who is the poor. So we need to know the segment of society that we are trying to help.
Mhm.
Do you agree that it cannot be everyone who is living on the streets?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Now,
I'll give you the first cut
give me it.
because I'll give everybody the easy ones.
Mhm.
You're the wacko who will start. Yeah.
I'll start knocking off more groups. Yeah.
What is is it Ron Swanson?
Mhm.
Slash it and burn.
Yeah.
He's gutting the government.
Yeah.
So there are a group of people
Uh-huh.
in Grand Junction.
Yeah, this is a good place to have this podcast because you and I have dealt with this here locally more than a lot of people in a lot of cities have.
The church that I pastor
Mhm.
is across the street
Yeah.
from one of the most
Go ahead, use the word infested.
highly used.
Yeah.
It's a public park
It is a public park.
that people use
Mhm.
as their shelter.
Mhm.
It's home base.
Yeah.
I know bunches of guys.
Yep.
There is a certain population of the people who, they don't have residence there, but they stay there.
Mhm.
They'll spend a night there. They'll
Yeah.
do whatever there. Who will just tell you, I'm not going to a homeless shelter.
Mhm.
I'm not going to Catholic Outreach for food.
Mhm.
I'm not going to somebody's house. I'm staying out here and I'm looking for money to do drugs with.
Yeah.
And that's it, bottom line.
Yeah.
If you can't give it, I don't want your McDonald's burger.
Yeah.
Now, that's a certain amount of people. I don't have any percentages.
Yeah, and
then
we don't
there's
need
other people
numbers
from
to-
there.
yeah.
Sure.
But we can agree. Okay, so let me piggyback on that.
Mhm.
Okay, so you know that I'm a recovering drug
Mhm.
addict. I've gone through Narcotics Anonymous.
Yes.
I've gone to rehab. I sponsor guys. I have a sponsor. I have worked in a drug rehab.
Yes.
I have worked in the St. Mary's emergency room and pumped on the chest of these guys to start their heart. I have administered Narcan to bring them out of an opioid coma when they stopped breathing and saved their lives. I've dealt
Yes.
with drug addiction. Does the drug addict count when we say the poor? I say no way.
That's really interesting coming from a guy who's like been there, done that.
Yes.
Because I haven't.
So let me tell you why, and then you can tell me
Yeah.
if you think so or not. This is the reason why. When we support a drug addict in any way that allows them to continue in their addiction, that is called enabling.
So one of the things that I do personally,
Mhm.
I don't give anybody cash.
Sure.
I will go down to McDonald's or Arby's or whatever, and I bring people food all the time.
Sure.
But I don't give out any cash anymore.
Now, I'll tell you this, I don't even do that. And there's a reason why, and I'll get to it. Okay. So enabling is anything that you do that protects the addict from the consequences of their addiction. So what we're doing when we enable someone is we are helping them to remain in their addiction and delay the decision to get help for their problem. And this is coming from a guy that's talked to husbands of addicts, wives of addicts, moms and dads of addicts, boyfriends and girlfriends of addicts. And they really struggle with the whole idea of, oh, well, my son's going to get kicked out of his house. Or, they're going to lose their apartment, or, oh, they don't have any food, or all these things. And I always say, that's awesome. They're really getting close to needing to change their life. And they look at you like you're a monster. And it's like, no, sure. I've been doing this for almost 25 years. Okay. I've buried lots of friends who were in addiction and could not get over it. Yeah. And guess what? I'm going to bury a lot more. That's addiction. It's ugly and nobody wants to think of it that way. But addicts are either going to get the help they need and get over it, or they're going to die in their addiction. And I hate to say it, lots of them die in their addiction.
Oh, yes. Yeah, for sure.
So anything that I do to provide any level of help or comfort, which prolongs the addict from having to deal with their addiction and get help, I believe is enabling. Now, that's, again, I'm the black and white guy. I take a real hard line.
Yeah.
But for me, okay, so when I was a drug addict, Zach, do you know that there was not one single day for years and years that I did not use illegal drugs?
No.
Not one day.
Yeah, how many years?
I don't know.
A few.
Under 3, but more than 2.
Yeah. Okay.
Not one day.
Wow.
So if I'm able to raise the money I need to support my addiction every single day. And you know what, Zach? I don't think I went a single day without cigarettes either.
Probably not.
Yeah. So
it's not real cheap from what I understand.
No. But they have the means to feed themselves. But if it comes down to skipping a meal and getting the drugs for the day, or not having the drugs for a day and getting a meal that I need, every single drug addict is going to go for the drugs. None of us are going to go for the meal. My point is simply this. They don't need any help. The whole lifestyle is lie, cheat, and steal, scheme, connive, con, but we have a million ways to raise the money that we need to get the fix that we need.
Now, you were never homeless.
No, I mean,
couch surfing or something, or
there were periods of time just where it was kind of like that, where it was like, but no, never. Because do you know the last thing every addict loses? So when you start doing drugs, you're going to lose a variety of things. You might lose your driver's license, right? You get a DUI. You might lose your girlfriend or your wife or your kids or a whole bunch of things. Do you know the very last thing every single drug addict loses?
No.
Their job.
That's the last thing. Because they need the money.
You need the money. And if you want to make your addiction really difficult, you lose your job. So you will figure out a way to keep that job or get another one, because all of a sudden at the end of the day, you got to come up with a lot of money, and there was an easy way to do it. And that was, you're 9 to 5. Yeah. So you move from a level of functional alcoholic and addict to a level of unfunctional. And whenever you become an unfunctional, drug addict or alcoholic, the job's going to go and you're not going to be able to pick up another one.
Sure.
And at that point, you're faced with a reality. I either need to get help or I am going to start living on the streets. And some people, it's so strong that they're willing to give the streets a go.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, that doesn't surprise me. That I know.
So that's why I say, no, the drug addict does not count, because the goal is for them to get so sick and tired that the pain of addiction outweighs the fear and pain of recovery. Because it's scary to think you're going to give up drugs and it's going to be a lot of work. But we need the pain to get so bad that they say, you know what? I'll try. I will do anything to get over this. And when they get to that point, they're in a good place. And then we shift gears and we want to help.
Sure.
But not until that point. And that's what a lot of people that have not been through addiction struggle with. They think the point is mild discomfort is when we need to start helping them. And it's like, no. It's, it's a ways down the road.
Wow. That is interesting.
Yeah, so that's the idea. It's not going to be a popular one. I don't expect I'm going to convince a lot of people, of that. But what I am saying is, anytime you pull up to a stop sign or a traffic light and there's a guy with a cardboard sign and you give them money, you are enabling them. That's what I'm saying.
We had a guy worked in the homeless teen,
Helping the homeless teams in the community,
in the valley. Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he's told us about helping people at the church is that if you help them, they don't change.
Yes.
So, I mean, obviously the change for you was you met a guy named Jesus. And then
that was after I met Jesus in
AA
recovery. Yes.
Oh, in recovery.
So I was an atheist heading into recovery.
Wow, really?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
Wow.
I was challenged to pray in my very first Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Okay, I was in the meeting, and it was a small meeting. There was maybe like 6 or 8 of us, and I was kind of, complaining about a couple things. I was like, man, I'm really stressed out. I got this DUI hanging over my head, and I got, all this stuff. And a couple of the guys.
And you were like early 20s.
Oh, I was 17.
17.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a wreck. Yeah, we'll get into it.
Actually, your poor mom.
What's that?
Your poor mom.
Oh, yeah. You should ask her about it sometime.
I will.
Yeah,
I will.
Talk to her about it. Say, tell me about when Patrick was doing drugs and drinking. What? I mean, I probably knocked years off her life. So anyway, I went to this meeting, and these guys were like, man, you need to pray about that. You need to pray about that. And I said, well, I don't believe in God. And this one old guy looked at me like I was an idiot. Yeah. And he says, you don't need to believe in God for God to hear your prayers.
Oh, wow. This is a good one.
And I thought, man, that makes sense. And I went home and I prayed for the first time in my life that I remember. And I got up off my knees and I felt good. I felt better. And I couldn't really describe the feeling other than maybe encouraged, satisfied.
Okay. Yeah.
But I felt like someone heard me, and it was I felt like I did a good thing. And I prayed every day since then.
Yeah. Satisfied is a good word.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, I was, I forget where the question was going with this, but, so that's when I started to believe in God. I didn't know who, didn't know personally. I knew it was a God that was interested in me. I was monotheistic, didn't have any more specifics. A couple years later is when I met Jesus.
Okay.
Yeah. I was about 3 years sober when
How
it was,
about that?
Yeah, specifically shown to me that not only, is it the God of the Bible, but that Jesus made a way for me to go to heaven and have my sins forgiven. Yeah, I know.
That is intense, man.
Yeah.
I like that.
Okay. So
yeah, next group.
Who else does not count as the poor people that we need to help?
Okay.
That a lot of people might think we should help.
There's one, I think, really clear group that the Bible gives us. This is Old and New Testament both.
Yeah.
I'm sure you got First
right
Timothy in there, right? People who are capable and refuse to work.
Okay, so Zach is referring to 2 Thessalonians 3:10. Paul said, "For even when we were with you, this we commanded you, that if any would not work, neither should he eat." So we cannot provide for the lazy and the indifferent. And we're talking about the people who can provide for themselves, but choose not to. The folks that just would rather live off of others.
In Darren's book, he's reading an article, and so you have atheists, you're theists, and agnostics. They wanted to put another group in there called apatheist.
Okay.
Which is just like
apathetic and
like don't know, don't care.
Yeah.
Like literally just couldn't. Yeah, no, the Bible is pretty clear.
Yes.
And that's Paul. Grace and charity abound.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's the same guy.
Right. Searching for every sinner who will commit themselves to Jesus. take care of the widows and the poor, and it's on the list. But he says, look, if you have capable people who simply refuse to hold a job, he doesn't give you really any, he says lazy, but there's not a lot of other reasons there. Well, I just don't like it.
Yeah. That's fine.
Sure. But you can't, you're
refusing to do what you can do.
Yes.
Hey, give me 1 second. Your camera froze. I'm going to remove you.
I can fill up
you back in.
I'm going to fill up some airtime in between if they can hear me.
I don't know if they can or not, but
yeah.
Okay. Now you have a black screen. Boy, I'll tell you what. I wonder if it is.
There's something.
Yeah, I hate when this happens. Okay, let me. Nope. This is ridiculous. Yeah, it's just as bad. Okay, we're going to keep going. And oh. Yep. Let's try it again. Give it 1 second.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, that's fine. This is why we record it in 2 different places. Okay, let's try this.
Get the editors out.
Well, and that's why I record it on the soundboard, because when we have a problem with this, I think what it is. Okay, so here we go. Here it is. And all right. Okay, you're back on. So sorry, guys. I had to murder like 10 minutes of video.
Yeah.
I can edit it out for the podcast.
Sure.
You know, like on Spotify. On the video, it's just going to be
It's just there.
whatever.
Yeah.
You were okay.
So I was talking about apatheism, right? Where you're just like, don't care.
I don't care.
So like, I don't need to work. Somebody else will buy me some food.
Yep.
Now, so there's a difference between being in between jobs, right? And not working at all. There's a difference between being laid off and trying to find something. And I think if we dealt with things on a case by case basis, we would all agree with that.
I think so.
Yeah. But to just simply say, like, look, I'm just not gonna. I just don't like it.
Okay, so I'm going to give you one, and I brought this up before, and I want to bring this up mostly to make people aware of this, because I don't think a lot of Christians understand this. There is a level of this going on in Christianity all over the place, and that is not wanting to work anymore.
Not wanting to work anymore.
Yeah,
like retirement.
No. I mean, get a second job.
Try
to push myself to maybe get more education or more training,
to
get a promotion or a better job. And I see this all the time. And this is one of my biggest complaints when we're talking about the welfare state and the government being involved. And I have friends of mine that are in this situation. The guy and the girl, they both love Jesus. They go to church, boyfriend and girlfriend. They get pregnant, they have a kid, and they decide they're not going to get married because the girl, as a single mom, is able to get a ton of assistance for her and the kid, which helps the couple out, because all of a sudden we got all this money for groceries, and we got, we can get government subsidies to help the kid with clothing and schooling and all these things. And then they decide, okay, well, we should really buy a house. So we're going to find a house, and they both work, but keep in mind, a single mom with kids is always going to be eligible for some level of assistance. Real quick, Zach, did I tell you how much money my wife and I are allowed to make and still get a $1,500 check for food stamps from the government every month?
No.
So I think everyone here knows that we are a married family of 8.
Yes.
So we have 6 kids, my wife and I, and we're a single income family. Okay, my wife stays home and homeschools. The government says because there's 8 of you, you are allowed to make up to this amount of money, and we still consider you poor enough where we will give you $1,500 a month in food stamps. Guess what that number is? Guess how much money we can make and claim on our taxes before they cut off our $1,500 in food stamps?
$1,500 food stamps per month.
Per month. Now, really quickly, I am not on food stamps.
I understand.
Okay, I want to make sure everyone understands that.
On that. Yeah.
We can get this. We do not get it. Okay, and don't get me wrong. I don't care what family you are. $1,500 in groceries would be wonderful.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, boy, you kidding?
Guess how much money the government says we can make, and we're still considered poor enough. No, for the year. For the year, because you go to buy taxes.
Okay, sure.
So for the year, to be considered poor enough to where I can still get the food stamps.
Well, obviously, I'm going to be astonished. But let's pick a number.
Yeah.
How about a family of 8? Let's say $60,000.
$90,000.
$90,000.
$90,000. You want to know why America is bankrupt? Because people making $90,000 a year can still get $18,000 in food stamps.
I was going to say $18,000 is like that. That's what I get paid for my part-time job.
It's
You're right. I'm like, wait a minute, I can double that value? Yeah, sure.
It is insane. So the young couple, who is boyfriend and girlfriend, they're not married. They know God says you're supposed to get married. I, as a pastor, had talked to them and said, why aren't you guys married?
Yep.
And they said, because we would lose our government assistance. So the wife applies for a loan. By this time, they have several kids. So it's the, quote, single mom.
Well, but he's living in the house. It's just his
apartment. He's living in the house.
His address
is at his mom and dad's house. All it has to be is on his license.
Sure.
And then he gets his mail there.
Yep.
He can even own the house because he co-signed for her. So his name, he legally owns the house with her, lives there, mom and dad. Everything looks the same as every other married couple, but they're not married. And the kids, they'll get the food stamps, they'll get the clothing, they'll get the help with school, they'll get help with college. They get help with everything. And the government being involved. And keep in mind, I mean, millions of people across America know these tricks and are taking advantage of the system. And it is encouraging Christians to not obey God. Do you know how hard it is to get Christians to obey God without the government telling them we'll give you money to disobey God?
I got an idea. I got an idea. Yeah.
You try very hard to teach your Christians in your church to obey God, and it's not an easy job.
No, it's not an easy job. And my guys are great too. Yeah. I mean, they're awesome. And it's still though, no, that's pretty astonishing. $1,500.
That's for us. Now,
sure.
A family of 4,
right? Because you adjusted on all the numbers, sure, but still,
it's still a lot of money. And here's the point: if you're making $90,000 a year with a family of 8. Can we agree that you are in the top 5% of earners in the world?
Probably, yeah. Oh, almost assuredly.
Probably in the top 2%. I've done the math before. I didn't do it recently. Even in America, I mean, it's unbelievable. $90,000. How many people do you know that have a job where one person pulls in $90,000?
Not a lot.
That's a phenomenal job.
Yeah, it's a good job, especially around here.
So anyway, so who is the poor? Okay, so let me give you my idea, and then you jump in and tell me what you think. So here's my idea. When the Bible is talking about helping the poor, someone who needs assistance in order to be able to take care of themselves, someone who can provide some of their own needs, but is incapable of providing for all of them.
For all of them. Okay, so that one is really interesting because I know there's one group of people that I really want to talk about, at least for a little bit. We can wait, I think, because you got more notes there. I'm with you so far, though.
So the idea, and we're going to get into what the Bible says as far as, the two specific groups that it brings up in several places in the New Testament. But the idea of the poor is we are supposed to help someone to be able to help themselves. That's the goal. The goal of public assistance is to get everybody off of it, not continue to get more people on it. So when someone falls down and they get hurt and they have a need, we're there to help them, and then hopefully they can get back on.
Unemployment until you get your next job.
You got it, that kind of thing. And in the same way, there are some people that maybe, and we've talked about widows, where the sole breadwinner maybe dies, and now all of a sudden they're able to provide some, but they are struggling, and that's who we're there to provide for. We are not there to enable people who want to live in their own addiction. We're not there to enable the lazy to continue to do so. We are there to help some people who will always need help, and other people who hopefully will need a small amount of help for a small amount of time, or maybe total help for a small amount of time. But the goal is not to keep adding people, keep throwing people into the cart that we pull up the hill indefinitely. Now, I want to make this quick point just to move on down the road. This does not include the permanently disabled, people with physical or mental handicaps who are incapable of providing for themselves. This group is separate and needs to be dealt with differently, and we can address that.
Yeah, because those are the guys I'm thinking of.
Yeah, and we're going to get there, and please make sure that we circle back around to that. So what do you think of that as far as the poor?
The point that I'm going to have to think about a little bit is that the idea of public assistance is to get people off of it.
The goal is
hopefully the case.
Yeah, is hopefully they don't need it forever. Because if we only use public assistance for the people that have an accident, have a catastrophe, they need the help, they're on it for a while, and then they get back on their feet and they're off of it, that's the perfect use of it. But with that being said, you and I both know there are widows, and we'll use widows because it's a biblically mandated person to take care of. And even then, there are qualifications. It doesn't just say every widow. Okay, if the widow is, 25 years old and healthy, it's like, well,
you got some other kids.
Yeah, you can get married still. You're capable of working. Okay, but for the widow that is, older and is not able to, get back to work, and she's already put in her time, she's had kids, maybe grandkids, and it's like this lady is not going to be able to work a 9-to-5 job anymore.
Right.
So, but the goal is, when we're helping the poor, is to make sure they have the basic provisions and make sure anyone that falls down and needs the help can get lifted back up. And then there are going to be some people that are going to need it,
all the time,
indefinitely, to some degree. And then the last group that we talked about, which is the physically and mentally handicapped who need total care all the time. I think everyone agrees that it is our job as a society to take care of those people and to take care of them totally. No, I don't think anyone would disagree. Actually, that's not true. You go to a lot of countries, other countries.
Oh, hey, yeah, that is for sure.
So one thing that we're going to get into when we get into, and this is actually a good segue for the problem with relying on the government for these things, is that in some countries, they literally exterminate these people.
I would not doubt it at all.
Yeah. I can bring you to the articles. Yeah, I mean, it's not widely publicized in those countries.
Sure.
But there are lots of countries where they're like, well, I know how to take care of the, homeless and poverty-stricken populations in our inner cities.
I can tell you some Kenyan stories, but that's maybe for another day. Yeah, so give me a little bit about the government here, man, because this is your world.
Yeah,
man.
So this is Patrick's big problem.
Yeah.
My big problem is that when the Christian has a job to do, and we turn that over to the government, it's going to be a mess. It's not being done the way God wants. And the Christian that can be doing the helping is missing out on a blessing and learning things that God wants us to learn. And then not doing it God's way is always going to be suboptimal. It's not going to work out nearly as well as if we did it God's way. Okay, so number one, well, let me go through. I got a list. When I stick to my notes, I find it goes smoother.
Yeah.
You know,
Read
really
the
is. Okay,
list
here we
and then
go.
I'll jump in.
Number one, the government. They are currently failing everywhere. That's it. That's number one. What do you think?
You want me to jump in after? After each one.
Do you see? Can you make a case otherwise?
Well, the only reason I can't is probably because I just don't. This is where I become not an apatheist, an governmentalist. I literally just don't even care enough to check and see.
To look into. Okay, so let me ask you this. In our valley, is the government cleaning up the homeless population? Are they being taken care of?
I mean, I know that do the police officers count? I mean, like there's people who are doing work.
Yeah.
But like when I have a guy that I'm talking to, I send them to Catholic Outreach. It's downtown.
Yep.
They get lunch. If you're sober, they can get you a place to stay. And that's all run under the Catholic Church.
Sure.
So I don't send people other places.
Yeah. Do you know of a phone number or a location where the government is in charge, where you can send people and they're just going to get the help they need? That's my question for you.
Is Homeward Bound? Do you know if Homeward Bound is that's private run?
I would have to look into it.
Yeah, I don't know.
Even then, Homeward Bound, what are the problems with Homeward Bound? Number one, always full.
Yes.
Okay, so, you know, if we're looking to help the people, we have to help the number of people in the population.
Yeah.
Not just say, well, we put up one building and there's 20 beds there, and that.
There's two phone numbers I call, right? And this is just Zach in one little place in one little downtown area, right? There's two phone numbers I call. I call Catholic Outreach. I call non-emergency dispatch. And I talk to the police, and they come handle stuff for us. If we, like, say, have a break-in.
And what Zach means when he says handle stuff is he means they take them out to the alley and they beat the sense out of them.
Oh, is that? Yeah.
Get them off the church property.
I have called police in the wintertime and said, here's what I got. He's in the carport. This guy is not going to make it.
Sure.
Unless somebody comes and picks him up.
He's going to
in the next hour.
Yeah.
I called police.
Yeah.
So that's, as far as the question goes, that's what I can tell you. You
don't have glowing reviews of the government, which is what I find everywhere. It's not you. It's not you personally.
Yeah, interact as little as possible.
My point was, you didn't say, "Oh, Patrick, you don't know about this magical phone number that we call," and bada bing. 3 months later, these guys are off the street and they're employed and they're healthy and they got all their shots and, you know, they're off to the races. There's nothing even close to that. Okay, so that's my number one. Okay, number two, you ready for this? Problems with relying on the government. Problem number two, only a prosperous and compassionate government has a chance at success. Zach, is our government prosperous?
I would have to. Well, I suppose it depends on your definition. I know that they got an awful lot of the money that shows up, but I know they also owe an awful lot more.
Yes. So our government is a debtor nation.
Oh,
we give money,
and famously.
You got it. Okay, so we don't have the funds to help with this. Okay, what about compassionate? Is our government compassionate?
They'd like to tell you they are.
They will tell you they are, at least every November.
So here's the weird thing about compassion, right? Because this goes back to the thing from before. if it's better, if it's easier for a person to stay on assistance when they don't need it anymore.
Is that compassion?
Is that compassion or not?
Okay, so do you know why? Do you like national parks? I mean, when you get a chance, would you like to go to a national park?
I'd love to do Yellowstone.
Yeah, I've never been to Yellowstone.
Yeah.
I've been to Yosemite.
Okay.
And that one's breathtaking.
Yeah.
If I'm going to go to another state and I have a chance to visit a national park, they're usually kind of one of those things on the list where they're nice attractions. Most people like going to them. Have you ever been to one that has a significant wildlife population? Bears or deer or elk or, in Yellowstone.
Yellowstone.
In Yosemite, it's the same. Bears out the wazoo.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen a sign that says, "Don't feed the bears"?
Yes.
What is the theory behind that sign, Zach?
Well, if you feed the bears, they keep on showing up and they start eating your kids.
So if you
they'll stop eating
okay,
on their own. Like they won't hunt.
So you're saying they'll become dependent on the free food that's provided to them.
That's what I'm told
by the tourists.
That's what I'm told.
Okay, so that's the idea in every state and national park, everywhere, is if you just hand it over. And what was it that your friend said?
As long as you continue to give them things for free, they won't change.
Yeah, there's no need to. What's the incentive? Right?
Mm-hmm.
So that is one of the big issues as far as the government being involved. I don't look at that as compassion. I look at that as holding people back. And I'm going to go get into this a little deeper in a second. Now, here is, okay, so you know what? Let's go with this one. Zach, when a group of people tries to help the poor, what does the government do? Let me give you a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Okay, because I know my questions are not very good. They're too broad, and I'm looking for an answer, and I'm not helping you find it. Let's say that there's a charity that's helping poor people. Okay. And they decide they want to put on some type of function to raise money to help these poor people. And in this case, they decide to have a raffle.
Like a golf tournament, maybe.
Sure.
With a raffle.
With a raffle, and they're going to sell tickets to raise
Sure.
money.
Sure.
What's the government's response to that?
So it's actually illegal to do that.
Uh-huh.
So what you need to do is go through a certain process.
Uh-huh.
With your state government.
Your state government.
Pay them a few shekels.
You got to pay them some money
to
be allowed to do what they said is illegal without their permission.
Yes.
Which is raising money for poor people.
Yes.
So the government, when a private organization is trying to raise money to help poor people, the government, is it fair to say the government says we need a cut?
It's a small one. It was for us, at least. But yeah, I mean, you can't do it unless we tell you can do it.
And there's always a fee.
And then there's a certain.
There are parameters.
There's parameters.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sure.
Zach, not even the mob has the stones to look you in the eye and say that when you're trying to raise money.
Government is very brave.
Yeah. It's unbelievable.
That we can agree on.
They want their cut. Zach, have you ever heard of bake sales getting shut down?
I haven't heard of a bake sale.
Okay,
so I have heard of kids do lemonade stands. Yes.
Sure. And who shuts them down?
Well, I think that one was local government, but it's because of some ordinance somewhere or another.
So the umbrella term we could use is the state, okay, which represents the government on the federal, state, county, local levels. Bake sales being shut down because the food was not made in a stainless steel county health department approved kitchen.
Sure.
Right. Even though every old lady's house I've been to my entire life gives me a brownie and I eat it. I dare
if the same grandmas would have made the same guy's lunch, they'd eaten it.
Yes.
Yeah, while they were shutting down the bake sale. Yeah, of course.
But we can't sell those brownies because they weren't done the way that we say, and we have to inspect it, and you got to pay a fee. So my problem is that the government gets in the way. They make it difficult. They charge you money, and they make the process difficult when the individual tries to help somebody else. Now, question number 3, problems with relying on the government. Did Jesus ever say that the government needs to be involved?
In anything, or just
in charitable work?
Not that I recall.
Do you know why?
So I could think of a couple of things. One would be that obviously the governing structure that God set up and gave to Israel is substantially different than everything else that's ever been set up everywhere.
Yeah.
So there's that.
But I mean, did Jesus ever implore the Roman government to help with the poor that he was talking with? On the Sermon on the Mount, was there a provision for the government to get involved?
Nope.
Hey, the reason
he'll pay taxes, right? Like he does the church.
Absolutely.
And, right.
But as far as the government, did Jesus call the Roman government to help the poor that he was talking about on the Sermon on the Mount?
He did not.
He did not. Okay. And the reason why is that governments are not individually responsible. Individuals are. So if you think about it, is the current government in Venezuela or North Korea or China going to be compassionate and supportive? What are you laughing at, Zach? This is a serious question.
No, I understand. It's an interesting group of countries there.
Is the government in Venezuela, North Korea, or China going to be compassionate or supportive of the poor?
I'm going to go with.
This is just a gut answer.
Yeah.
I know you haven't done any polling.
I understand. It's hard to see. The North Korea is one of those that I know the most about. Mm-hmm. It's hard to envision North Korea's government being compassionate about. The guy's not compassionate to his own brothers.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So I feel like you're leaning towards no.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are many countries,
unless there's a benefit.
Sure, but then it wouldn't be compassion, right? Compassion is without thought of return.
Yeah. You're playing some kind of game.
So there are many countries where the government will either turn a blind eye to or be directly involved with some form of social cleansing, which is literally the extermination of one type of group or another. And in many cases, it is the poor, the elderly, different things like this, because it's a drain on society. That is my big concern anytime the government gets involved, because they're going to look at the balance sheet and they're going to say, well, if this group and that group wasn't being supported by us, it'd be a lot easier, for us to.
So what can we do about that?
You got it.
Yeah, sure.
Now, these might be considered extreme examples by some, but my point is simply this. Some folks are relying on the United States government to help the poor simply because of the state we are in. But can we all agree that if a different form of government was in charge, we would consider the idea laughable? If we live in Venezuela or North Korea, would we consider the idea laughable?
Of the government taking care of the
being compassionate.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there are countries all over the world where the government could care less if the poor die in the street.
Unless you get votes.
Sure. Yeah.
Until but if there's no votes to be had.
What's the point? Okay, so let us get into. Okay, let me just move down the line here. The argument for public assistance from the government is that the public has not adequately provided for the poor, and therefore the government must step in to do it. Okay, that was the argument that came up back in the early 1900s. Now, I personally believe that is not the reason that the government started public assistance. They did it to consolidate power and control society, but that is for another day.
Sure.
Um,
I do think they probably had a little bit of ground to stand on there, though, as far as individual people not pitching in enough to deal with problems.
So, and that's going to bring up, I'm gonna write that down. Okay. Because we want to come back to that, and we want to ask the question, is that the idea that it is left up to individuals and that system is not perfect, is that reason enough to abandon that system and go with turning it over to the government? And I would say no, because what we've seen is the government since 1913, 1935, 1965, some of these dates and years of different presidential not candidates, but different presidents and their, what's the word?
Legislation that was put in place.
We've seen that they failed by every measurable standard. So government welfare in the United States today is intended as a means to provide financial assistance to those in need, protect children and elderly, compensate for unemployment, and combat poverty. Welfare programs, first instituted by FDR in 1935 and then later expanded by LBJ in 1965, have done nothing more than enslave millions of Americans to financial bondage, perpetuate generational poverty, promote entitlement, expectation, and lack of accountability, and essentially destroy the nuclear family unit. Now, I know that's strong language, but I do stand by it.
Sounds like Patrick Hayes wrote it.
Yeah. So, is the government succeeding at taking care of the poor? I would say not by a long shot. Since the government has taken over public assistance, it has failed by every measurable standard. Additionally, fraud is rampant. Why is fraud rampant?
People like money.
Okay, I'm going to say because of the difference between the way God set it up and the way the government does it today, and that is that the U.S. government practices a third-party form of assistance. Now, what I'm going to say is that in the Bible, over and over and over again, God commands us to take care of the poor, to take care of the widows and the orphans, to be charitable, to be benevolent, to be generous. All of these things are clearly taught in the Bible. Neither of us would argue that. Okay.
Correct.
Now, the difference is that Jesus did not go around with threat of imprisonment, taking people's money and then doling it out to other people for his benefit.
Sure.
That's exactly what the government does. There's a difference between taxes and charity, and a massive difference. Okay, so let me give you the idea. Let's say I wanted to buy your wife a birthday present. Okay?
Yeah.
So I could go to Jessica and I could say, hey, your birthday's coming up. What do you want? Joanna and I want to get you something.
Ice cream.
Yeah, okay, whatever she says. Okay,
Yeah.
Great. We're going to go get it. Here you go. Jessica gets just what she wants. She's happy.
Right.
Okay, number two, I asked you what I should get her.
Right. Sure.
Is that going to be as accurate? Is it going to be as helpful to Jessica? Is it going to satisfy her need or want as well as if I just asked her?
I'd like to think so.
But really, how many husbands have fought this?
Well, right. Yeah.
Oh, I know what my wife wants.
And of course, usually she likes this kind of ice cream, but then that day she's feeling a little bit different and she wants something else, and I don't know. And sure.
So then I have a third way of doing it, and that is I ask someone who doesn't know her what I should get her.
And they've got a list that says, okay, this is the birthday present list.
You got
and
it.
This is
women of this age and this demographic, typically like this.
And so they send her the perfume
yep.
and just goes, I'm allergic to this.
Yeah.
And
throws it out.
Hopeless.
It's totally okay.
Right.
So that is first, second, and third party birthday present purchasing and giving. Now, in the same way, when we're talking about charity, you see a need and you fulfill that need. Whether it's through money or whether it's through a service, you know someone that needs it and you fulfill that need. You just accomplished what Jesus was talking about.
Yes.
Then you have second party fulfillment, which is I'm going to give to my church, to a charity, to another individual to fill a need.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have third party. The government takes my money and says they have fulfilled the need.
So carefully worded. The government takes my money and says they fulfilled the need. Yeah.
The problem is with the third one is that number one, there's a bureaucracy that takes a large percentage of the money that we
and a lot of time.
You got it. Oh yeah, it's slow and it's big. There's no accountability from me or anyone else who had their money taken. We don't know if our money was used correctly by the government. And
I don't get a line item, the year after. It's like, all right, Zach, here's your taxes. Here's what we did with them.
And a lot of charities will do those things because they want to promote transparency, because they know that those that give to their charity appreciate that and feel like their money was used wisely.
Yes.
So that's why we show them what it did. This is the name of the person, and here's the picture. And look at that. They have their books for their next year's whatever.
Yep. Okay. Absolutely.
Furthermore, we don't know who received the money when the government gets it, or if anyone who needed it actually received it.
I got an address.
Yeah. 1600 Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Sure.
So that is the problem when you're dealing with what Jesus said, which is charity. You do it yourself, or you give it to the charity or church, versus third party, which is what the government does. The government collects money from all over the country. The government doesn't know any individuals or what they're going through or what they need. And then oftentimes it is late, it is insufficient, it is ineffective. There's all of these problems with it as opposed to first party. Okay. If the government is going to put any effort into helping the poor, they should, this is my belief, number one, stay out of the way of people and groups who are working to solve the problem. Lose the regulations, stop charging us when we try to help others.
Yeah, sure.
Number two, incentivize people and groups who are working to solve the problem. They can do that through massive tax breaks. Okay? If we're not being generous enough, give us a even more massive tax break. Make it so financially beneficial to us that we would be insane not to be helping people.
Yeah, to give your money to people who need it.
But the problem that you run into is they only recognize certain amounts of given to certain types of groups, and none of it is first party.
I ran into that a little bit. Because of, how should I say this? Because of some of the way that my life was structured for a little while there, a very large percentage of my income, too large apparently,
for the government
ended up going into places that between tithing and Christian Challenge and Kenya, and you buy a couple of plane tickets, you get. It was a large percentage there
and
for a little while.
It was too large.
Well, I got a letter that was like, you do realize that when we're looking over your numbers, you've given away too much money.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. I did not realize that.
Sure. I didn't know that could be a problem.
I didn't know that was
a moron.
Yeah, but you have to, I know people that have to be careful about that.
Do you know that every year I don't claim my charitable giving?
once you go over a certain percentage,
what you find out is when you're dealing with your taxes, that is one of, say, the top 3 red flags that can cause you massive headaches. Okay, my next door neighbors, right there,
yes,
friends of ours,
yes,
have been dealing with attorneys and the IRS for 2 years now. Guess what they're trying to prove to the IRS? They're trying to prove to the IRS that they have children.
Hey?
Yeah. The IRS somewhere got the idea that your children are not real, and therefore all of these deductions are fake, and you owe us a bunch of money. It's been going on for over 2 years.
Wow.
How hard do you think that would be to prove that you have children? Well, when you're trying to prove it to the federal government and the tax man, it takes over 2 years and thousands of dollars in attorney's fees. How long would it take you to prove to me that you have kids?
Dumbfounded.
Yeah, I should be.
I'm thinking, I'm counting the different ways to.
Yeah. Zach, it's been going on for years.
Oh yeah, sure.
If I had to prove to you that I had kids, I would just invite you over to my house. Here's Zach. Take my kids and go question them.
And that's one of those things that there is a little bit of an underlying, there's an underlying idea that kind of goes through the whole thing. I think you're probably going to use this to sort of help tie things together, but there used to be really easy ways to do things.
Yeah.
They're not nearly as easy anymore. Mm-hmm. Takes a bunch of steps and a bunch of time. Mm-hmm. And there used to be a level of trust, understanding, responsibility, honor, maybe. Or like when I think about the poor, the federal government thinks about the poor in all-encompassing terms, right? When you have that, when you're working with those numbers, how could you not? Mm-hmm. Here's the United States. Here's the line that we draw. Mm-hmm. If you're above this, you're not poor. If you're below this, you're poor. Draw the line. Here's how many people are poor. Mm-hmm. So what are we going to do about this? Mm-hmm. Collect a bunch of money from other people, write a check so that each one gets an equal amount, and start shipping them out.
Yep. There you go.
I mean, what else could you do? Mm-hmm. But in real life, when people are actually living beside each other and together, and I've got a guy that's around the church, and I know his story, and I know what's going on, we can help that guy mm-hmm. and make a difference in his life, in his poverty, and move on.
Yeah.
But, yeah, like to maybe part of it's like, surely people are taking advantage of the government as well. Mm-hmm. If you've got a way where you've figured out loopholes or whatever else, and you've proven to them satisfactorily at least that you've got 6 kids, so you get X amount of money for the food stamps, but really you don't. Mm-hmm. Honor, respect, just do things right mm-hmm. instead of cheating and stealing and swindling. But that's a basic human heart problem.
Do you know that it's a lot harder to cheat and lie and swindle and have fraud when it's all first person?
Oh, sure.
Charity?
Sure.
Because now I have to convince you.
Yes.
Not fill out a form and mail it in somewhere. I have to convince you.
Yes.
Not a massive bureaucracy that has way too much to do already and can't keep track of everything.
Paperwork just gets higher every day.
No, I have to convince you that the dollars in your pocket would be better served in my pocket.
Yep. And so when I give them to you, and then 30 minutes later, I see you walking out of the liquor store with the bottles rather than the McDonald's.
I'm not going to be able to get money out of you again.
Right. But when you ship everything off and you get a check and you got a place to go pick it up, mm-hmm. the guy who sent the money doesn't know who you are. The government doesn't know who you are. And then you got your name and your card or whatever. And
Your address and social security
they,
number.
they have no idea what you're spending at all, and you get away with it.
Yeah.
Until you don't.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, you're right.
So can you show me one place in the Bible where God tells the poor to get their assistance from the government?
You'd have to do some really fancy footwork
to try to work it out.
Because like the priesthood isn't the government.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Israel in the Old Testament, prior to the kings, was a theocracy, which was different.
Yes.
And you want to know what happened? That whole idea of the priesthood getting their supply. Do you know what happened when kings showed up? There were bad kings that refused to give the priests their due, and they were starving to death. And when the government got involved, it was a mess.
Sure.
So the point I'm trying to make is that Christians need to be able to differentiate between charity and taxation and government assistance.
Yeah.
Those are not the same thing. The government welfare is not Christian charity. Jesus never asked the Romans for help with the poor. Neither did Paul or the 12 apostles. The idea is laughable. So then let me ask you this. Who does God command to take care of the poor?
People. I mean, the church?
Individuals.
Yeah.
The church and individuals are the two places that we find it in the Bible. So where do we find help when we need it? So take any individual family who is going through a hard time, list for me the places that they are supposed to get their help from.
Family. Friends.
So that's community. Friends and co-workers, neighbors. Church. Yeah. And you know what I say after that? That's it.
Yeah. I mean, that's the list that's given.
Do you want to know something, Zach? Do you know that this type of charity promotes morality? Because if you are an immoral, dirty, lying, cheating SOB, guess what? When you need help,
and you go to the church,
yeah, it's not there. Okay, your family doesn't want to help you, your community doesn't want to help you, your church knows who you. Everyone's like, no.
And that one's really interesting at the church, because when people come to us looking for help,
yeah,
they meet, all of them are Christians immediately.
Oh, I know. Everyone that shows up.
Every single time. All of them.
Yep.
With no exception.
Okay, so now I'm going to give you another idea. So you know that I am a strong advocate of church membership.
Yes.
This is one of the reasons why. So the Bible says to visit the fatherless and the widows in their affliction and to keep oneself on the bottom of the world. So you're supposed to help the fatherless. You're supposed to help the widows. Okay, so let me ask you this question, because this is where I think some people struggle. Are you, Zach, responsible for helping every widow?
I sure hope not. My wife is going to go in real quick. But yeah, no, I sure hope not.
So the idea is, where do we start? Well, I start with the widows in my locale.
The people that you know.
You got it.
Absolutely.
Am I responsible to help the widows in my church?
Yes.
100%. Okay, so I cannot be expected by God to help every widow in the world. I don't even know who they are. There's no way there'll ever be an account, a way to account.
But the church is supposed to be everywhere. So
yes.
Absolutely, yes.
So
in your local,
you got it, everywhere. And this is another thing that people don't seem to get. The government being involved in this, again, dissuades people from being a part of a local church and living an honest moral life. Because when there is a widow who is a moral person who everybody loves, or forget that, when there's a family who everybody loves because they're a good Christian and they're part of that church, when they fall on hard times, people are tripping over themselves
Yes.
to help those people.
Yes.
That is what I see in every church I've been involved in.
Yes.
Where we feel less comfortable is when it moves into that second party, charity, where it's like, I don't know you.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have an issue. And I always, so you got to remember, your church and my church are very different. Your church is probably on the internet and in a phone book. Okay, you have a sign in a building.
Yes.
We rent part of your building.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're not at the point yet, but I've been involved and I've been on staff with churches where literally every day someone is calling asking for assistance. And it's always a stranger and they always have a story and you've heard it so many times that it's easy to get callous.
Yes.
But I cannot give everywhere there's need.
No.
There's no way I could keep up.
No. Patrick can't. The church
Yeah.
can.
So if people were all part of a local church and they were members, then it would be easy to have accountability and say, look, this is the group we're helping. The town over there, there's churches there.
Yep.
And they're helping those people.
Yes.
Okay, so, and I'm not saying that my church only helps members of my church. You know that's not true.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
We
Right.
help lots of people. We help people around the world.
Yes.
We've written checks to help people all over the globe. But I believe we are called by God to help those that are our members. We try to help those, one step removed, maybe the families, and
because there is that second level where you trust people.
Correct.
Right? Where it's like, if you called me and you're like, look, here's the story.
Here's the deal.
What can you do?
Yep.
And we go, yep, we're going to get you some cash and we're doing it today. And yeah.
But I am not required to help everybody in my town, because then you get to a point where it's like, well, first of all, there's just not enough dollars in the coffers to do it.
Or time.
Yeah. It's absolutely impossible. So here's another one I'll tell you. I believe that government assistance dissuades people from tithing biblically.
Yeah, take me down the road.
When we
But
go
my
through,
money's already doing good work.
you got it.
Yeah.
When we go through the New Testament, after, let's talk about Book of Acts. The church, how often were they giving to the poor and to the widows?
Pretty regularly. They were feeding people.
Okay, do you remember the one time when one group rose up and had a problem and was complaining? They said that our widows are being neglected or denied in the daily administration. So the local church had a group. We don't know how big or small it was.
Sure.
But there was a number of people that they needed to help
Daily.
every day.
Yes.
So that was a group that they were helping. We don't know if it was totally or partially, but we know it was regularly.
Yeah. Yeah. Could just be food.
Yep. Maybe it was. So the idea is, when the church is doing that, all of a sudden there's a need and people need to give biblically. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to do that. And when the government's involved, everyone has the attitude of, oh, just get them on welfare.
Well,
Just
or
send
you've
them
already,
down to food stamps.
X percentage
I
is
get
already
so
gone
much in
anyway.
taxes. I can't afford to tithe. You ever hear that one? I can't afford to tithe.
Well, you give enough in taxes, and
Yeah.
it feels that way.
Oh,
for
it
sure.
hurts.
Oh,
I'm not
man.
saying it doesn't hurt.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But that's one more thing that I see public assistance doing, is it is de-incentivizing Christians from giving to where they're supposed to. Okay, so now let me ask you this. How have we, or how can we, help the poor. And I understand the whole right hand and left hand knowing, so we're going to lose our blessings by listing them online. But what I wanted to do was I wanted to give people practical ideas of how Christians actually help people. Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple off of my list.
And I'll jump in.
So number one, my wife and I, we tithe, and we are militant.
You don't say.
You might call me a Shiite tither.
Okay.
Just a radical fundamentalist with my tithing.
You did a podcast on that, didn't you?
I did. And keep in mind, I'm the pastor of a church, so I write checks. So our church we've supported several things, but we have charities that we've supported where it's really third party. Well, no, it's second party giving. We don't know any of the people that it goes to, but we trust the people that we're giving the money to.
Right.
Our church keeps enough money in our bank account so that if someone in the church is struggling financially, we can help.
Yes.
We've had times when actually during the whole COVID thing a couple of years ago, we had a couple who both got sick at the same time. They were very sick, and we would write a check to cover their mortgage to try to help out, with some way. We have had friends in the church and outside of the church who have had an injury or an illness where all of a sudden not able to work for, one guy broke both of his legs and got COVID and was like, oh, it was such a mess. And the money, they were fighting them on whether they were going to pay him, and help him. I mean, it was just such a mess. So again, wrote a check to help that person out.
Yep.
So that's what the church does. Okay. So the church is supposed to have some money to be able to try to help its members when they need it. Other than tithing, though, on an individual level, so I have a construction company.
Mm-hmm.
I currently have a list, albeit a reasonably short one, of widows. I was friends with the husband and the wife.
Yes.
I had one fella who I was personally friends with. He ended up getting cancer. It was pretty bad. We knew, he wasn't going to make it. And I told him, because they didn't make a lot of money.
Right.
They didn't have a lot of money to begin with. But they would hire me from time to time to fix certain things that were over their head. And I told the husband, I said, look, when you die, I'm going to take care of your wife. Whenever something breaks, she just calls me. I'll come do it. I'm going to charge her, and that's just what I'm going to do.
Right.
I just added another woman to that list just last month. Her husband died. I know them both. It was the same thing. And I told them this ahead of time.
Right.
I have another friend who I told this to. He's still doing fine, but I know it was a concern for him. Like, what's my wife going to do when I die? Because he does everything around the house. So that's something that I've done personally, where they need a plumber, they need something fixed. I go over there. I don't charge them a penny for my time, for the materials, nothing. It is pro bono work. Now, one thing that people don't seem to understand, that charity, that pro bono work, comes out of my abundance. It doesn't come out of my necessity. Okay, if I have to choose between feeding my kids and stopping a leak at a widow's house, well, I'm feeding my kids.
Yeah.
Okay. The only way it works is because I am able to make enough money, more money than I need, so that I'm able to donate some time and money to other people. And that's why it is so important that people, Christians especially, try to take care of their finances, be smart with their money, be able to have enough money coming in, keeping your expenses down to where you can save, so that because the fact is, we cannot be charitable if we are paycheck to paycheck, barely.
If you're one of the guys on the list,
then you can't do it.
Tell me about it.
I mean, you could be the widow who gives her last 2 mites, but that's a pretty desperate situation.
Yeah.
The people that are going to be feeding that widow that gave her last 2 mites are all the people that are making enough money to where they have, some level of abundance.
Sure.
But that's something for me. It's really not, mostly it's my time. It's really not a whole lot of money very often.
Well, but you already have some skills that people need. I do a lot of the same things. Church does a lot of the same things. Make a lot of meals.
Yep.
Right? We've got a benevolence fund. Got a lot of college kids.
Yeah.
Because of every time we have moved.
Oh yeah.
So many people.
Yeah. You have a PhD in
boxes.
boxes.
Oh man. I mean, that's going to be my next career.
Yeah.
If I get a box truck, when everything else falls apart, it's like,
Just name it former pastor moving.
I'm telling you.
Everyone will be like, oh, that
guy is what he's doing. Because all the time.
Yep.
But look, if you've got a situation and you need to try to move and you're paying a moving company and all the stuff, and so I'm making the calls, I'm finding 3 trucks, I'm getting 6 college kids. So we help people move constantly. When you have a skill, you have some time, that's giving rides to people. We had last week a single lady at the church in her mid-60s, not in great health. Her brother lives in Albuquerque. Fell suddenly with this weird spinal thing. And he's not in great health.
Yeah.
They needed to do surgery. Weren't sure that he was going to make it out.
Wow.
There's no direct flight. We were getting ready to buy a plane ticket to send her to Albuquerque. No direct flight. She's in a situation where we're worried enough about her making a transfer that we didn't want to send her through. We had a woman in the church drive her to Albuquerque so she could see her brother. And then the surgery worked, and things are okay. She's getting ready to come back.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just gotta. She did not have a way to do it.
Yeah.
She didn't.
Yep.
And so you figure out a way to do it. But if the guy's in the hospital, we need to wait for you fill out some paperwork and mail it
to the government and hope. And you know what's funny? The things that we're talking about, these aren't even the needs of eating and shelter.
Yeah, most of this is over.
These are needs where you want people to be able to have some level of human dignity. Where they can visit their loved one before they die, because that is something that humans should be able to do.
Yes.
And what I found is a lot of Christian charity is helping things that are way above and beyond the basics.
Yep. The next 2, other than food, the next 3 things on the list of the benevolence at the church that we do as a church. Rent, right? Just like you were talking about with your stories. Medication. And that's one I actually know a little bit about because of some of Darren's stuff and some of my parents' stuff. Get the government involved in making sure you get your right medication on time.
Yeah, good luck. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you want to talk about a nightmare.
Yeah.
Gas, tires, car repair.
Yeah.
We have done a bunch of times. Guy's got a job. He's holding it.
Yeah.
He's putting himself together.
Yep.
He's got food.
Yeah.
But when the car breaks down, it's just too much.
And it could just throw the whole thing apart. So it's like, look, we want to try to.
But for $600, we can get the car fixed, and the guy is going back to work, and
everything's back on track.
Yep.
You want to know one that? So we've done rent before, and I'm gonna keep in mind. I'm telling this is not. I'm not talking about my church.
Yeah, this
is Patrick and Joanna writing a check for a family that we knew. husband got laid off. It was back in 2008. The economy was garbage, and they were living paycheck to paycheck already because they have like 200 kids, and and it was one of those where we're like, look, and here's the thing: this family wasn't asking anyone for help. It was one of those. They showed up on Wednesday night. We got a prayer request because we're taking them.
Yes.
And everyone's able to pray. And guess what? We're, Joanna and I look at each other and we're like, we have, they're so stressed out about their mortgage,
right.
Let's write them a check for this month. And I'm going to give everyone a tip. Okay. So this is something practically speaking, a couple ways you can do this. Number one, you want to give them money, but you don't want them to know who it's coming from. You fill an envelope full of cash. Okay. And you fold that envelope in half and you open their gas on their car and you put the envelope in there and you close it and you just write on the envelope, "We love you." The next time they go to get gas, they open it up, the envelope falls out, they have the money. So if you don't want, so that's
pretty funny.
Yep, we've done that. We've, just when they were doing something at church, we opened their Bible, just throw the envelope right in the middle there, and you got an envelope full of cash. You can do it through the pastor if you want.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't care, if they're friends of yours and you want them to know we love you, and
sure.
Then one thing I always tell people is I say it's got to be a gift. It can't be a loan.
Because I've been on both sides of that one.
Yeah, and every time, you just have to say nope. This is yours because we love you. We are not lending you money. We don't want it back. If you want to pay us back, what you can do is you can save up this amount of money, put it in an envelope, keep it in your safe, and one day God will tell you who to give that to.
Absolutely.
But not us.
And that, I cannot tell you how often that happens.
Yeah.
Where I've been on the receiving end.
Yeah. So
of just as much.
So if when we were first married and we had a couple kids and we didn't have two nickels to rub together, I was on the receiving end of that.
Right.
We 20 years ago, my life was very different.
And so you feel like you owe something back.
Yes.
But that's another one of those differences between the entitlement and what we were talking about with the government assistance. Those guys do not feel like they owe anyone anything back.
They feel like they are owed more than
how
they
come?
can.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's because somebody told me exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I stood there and I looked at the guy and I was like, I have absolutely I can't even think of an idea about what to do to even tell you how much I appreciate this.
Sure.
Like I literally can't even do anything.
Yeah.
And he says, "Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Like, that's why we're doing this for you."
Yeah.
Right? But exactly the same thing. When you get your feet underneath you, you do the same thing for other people.
Yeah.
That's how it's going to work.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it does.
It does. It really does. Another thing that we've done is education.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times we paid the tuition for, a kid to go through the private school, out of church.
Sure.
And this, again, this is not a necessity, but it was a family who works very hard to raise their kids right. They were concerned about the public school. They sacrificed to get their kid in the private school. They weren't making the money.
Yep. A couple things happened.
You got it. And we know them. We love their kids, so we stepped up and paid the tuition. We've put kids all the way through, all 4 years of the high school. There's one young kid that comes to our church. He's 16 years old. The family he comes from is very poor, doesn't have anything. Anytime anything comes up that we hear about, we're always, for his birthday, he just sends us his wish list on Amazon because we want to get him something.
Yeah, right.
He has a church activity because he visits other churches and they have a youth group thing and a camp out, and we sent him to prom.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to go to prom, and he was all upset. And we were like, why are you so down the dumps? Well, prom's coming up and I can't go. And, I look at my buddy who is also, my age and looks out for this kid. And we're like, how much is prom?
Yeah.
He's like, well, I need like $120, and me and this guy are like, okay, well, we're going to give you 300. So, get what you need and get a limo for the night.
It's like, get a date.
There you go. Like you can pay for the flower for your date. You can rent the tux. Go to prom, man.
Yeah.
You have some friends, and this is a good kid.
Sure.
We're like, for crying out loud. Again, not a need, but that's okay because I earn the money. I can waste it on whatever I want.
You get to pick.
Yeah. And if I want to throw away money on some kid's, prom, then I can do it. I can pile my money up in a pile in my backyard and light it on fire. It's mine.
Sure.
Problem is that doesn't happen when the government gets a hold of it. That is my concern.
Yeah, going somewhere.
It's still going somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think the pile on fire is probably pretty apt as far as how effectively it's used. But that's the difference is when it comes to charity, I know the people that are getting it. I know I'm helping a real need. It's direct.
Yeah.
I see the fruit of it immediately. It is very different. That is why we talk a lot about government and Christianity, but that is the reason that I'm so against government assistance. I feel like it is anti-church, anti-Christian, anti-marriage, anti-tithing, anti-Bible. It hurts so many things because we just go, just get on welfare, get on food stamps. There you go. You got your help. And I see it as such a terrible thing. I am so against it. And I don't think it's easy to fix, and I don't think it's going to change. And if it were to change, it couldn't change like overnight. It would have to be, slowed down. But the Bible has some very strong language when it talks about these issues, and it weeds out the people that are lazy and indifferent. It weeds out the people who are taking advantage of the system. It weeds out the people who are destroying their life through alcoholism and drug abuse. It weeds out those groups, and it says, no, these are the groups that you are supposed to help, and these are the ways that you're supposed to help them. And I don't see a problem with the church paying for someone's rent every month, paying for their food, paying for it, until the day they die, and sometimes, helping people get back up on their feet and move forward. But it does not work unless everyone in the church is doing their job and they are tithing and money is coming in so that it can go out and can. It is so sad to me to think that the Christian church today is not the one helping its own people. That is so sad. That is such a horrible testimony to think that we would say, go to the government, they're going to help you. It's crushing to me. It should be a source of attraction where people should say, you know what? I admire these people and their sacrifice and what they do to help the poor. Not only that, I want to be a part of this group. I want to be a member of a church. I want to be around and have a community that would support me in case anything happened. This is a good thing that I want to be a part of. That, I think, is what Christianity should look like. And it's so sad to me that government welfare and food stamps and the whole government dole, I think, hurts that so much.
I don't think I have anything to add to that one.
Okay, so, Zach, I am at the end of my notes. We can talk about some verses in the Bible that command these things, but I don't think that's hard to find. I think the
They're in there.
Yeah, I think the thing that I wanted to do was clear up the misconception of what it means when we say take care of the poor, which is define the poor, define how we need to take care of them, and understand that the Christian individually helping the poor is not the same thing as the government doing it. We cannot say, I as a Christian have no responsibility to do this because
The government's
government
got it under control.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure. Took care of it, you know,
100% with you there.
and I don't have to do anything.
So we're in danger of going under 2 hours here.
Yeah,
unless I say something else.
If you have a question or something that
Well,
you've been dying to bring up,
I've got one. When I picked this topic, there's one set of people that I'm heartbroken for, and I don't know what to do about. And part of what you're saying, I think, is helpful in that if there was a vastly larger amount of financial resource, there would be a different way to deal with things. But legitimately, mentally disabled people who are disabled to a degree where it is not only impractical, but it's probably dangerous to have them try to hold a job, or live with family, or live with other people.
What do we do?
But they're on the street. The only thing that happens now is that they move around from place to place until the police are called. I mean, the police know these guys by name.
Oh yeah.
They will sometimes they'll just ask me.
Yeah.
Like once you have a dispatch person that you know decently enough, they're just like, is it Glenn?
Yeah.
Is it Dimitri? Because they see these guys every day.
Yeah.
And there is when they're dangerous to each other if they interact with each other.
Yeah.
Dangerous to themselves, to other people. I mean, I'm talking about things like schizophrenia, and so super small number of amount of people in the population. Totally understand that,
but they still exist.
But and they're when I leave the church to go for a walk, they're talking to themselves in the tube slide across the street, right? And man, I'm just like, they've worn out their families. Many of them, their families did the best they could for all these years.
Yeah.
Right. Kicked out of every school, institution, whatever. I look at these guys and I'm like, I just don't even.
Okay, so let me go over. Let me back up a step and we'll hit this. Okay, so number one of the questions we have is the folks that are physically or mentally handicapped to the point where they cannot take care of themselves. Are we, as a society, not even a Christian, as a society, obligated to help these people and to take care of them? And the answer is obviously yes. Now, the second question is, who needs to be responsible? And my answer is very simple and very open-ended. It is anybody but the government.
Yeah. Okay. Take them out of it than anybody else.
I'd be satisfied with anyone. Now, there are going to be several people who are going to require a level of care that can be given by a family, but they're going to need assistance. And in those cases, I'm going to revert back to the list. You're going to get help from your family. You're going to get help from your community. You're going to get help from your church. And everyone together needs to come together to give that level of assistance. Okay, then you get to a group where the family is unable to take care of them. It's just too much of a burden. There are people that require, total care. And we're not even talking about someone who is bedridden. Okay, we could be talking about someone, like you said, who is schizophrenic and they are confused about who they are, where they are, who you are, and they might not be small, right? So we have an issue. So in those cases, the first question I have to ask you is the government adequately taking care of those people currently?
Well, best I can tell, again, in Grand Junction, the idea is that those people aren't able to be cared for.
So if the answer is no, then to that question, then the solution cannot be the government, because the government is not doing it.
So I don't know if Mind Springs, there are places where you can take people, they'll do an intake, like they'll have a counselor or a psychologist and do an intake process, and then they'll decide, you keep this person here for 3 days, or you send them to Montrose for a week, or, something along those lines. But as far as I can tell, I don't know if there's any steps beyond that. They're just sort of safe for a little bit.
So you're going to need a private sector solution. If you don't need that, we're saying it doesn't work, okay, then we don't have to worry about it because the government's in charge. Are you satisfied with that answer?
No
one is. Okay, so we have to have a private sector solution. So what needs to happen is there needs to be a nonprofit charity type of situation where we can raise money to get these people the help that they need. That help is probably going to be expensive.
Oh yeah. There's going to be a group of people that are the hardest and most expensive ones to help. That's just the way it is.
I am still completely willing to be a part of that solution financially, because let's face it, I don't know what those people need.
Right.
I don't know the medications they need to be on. I'm not looking to get a full-time job as an orderly taking care of them. I'd be happy to chip in building the facility.
Right.
If someone, if someone wanted to get together and say, we're going to solve this problem, this is what we're going to do. I'll tell you the issue. The government's going to be what's going to get in the way, because they're going to say, well, you can't just throw people in there. They're going to say you're kidnapping them.
Right. Or you're going to have to prove all sorts of things about what you do all day long.
You're going to run into some issues. But as far as solving the problem, every problem always comes down to one individual or a small group that steps up and says, I'm going to take the bull by the horns and we're going to fix this thing. And we have experience in it. This is what's needed. We need a facility. We need a faculty, and we need a level of finances, and we can fix this problem. And I believe that every problem on earth can be fixed with those 3 F's.
The three F's.
The 3 F's: facilities, faculty, and finances. You can fix any problem in the world. Now, it might not be perfect, and it might be very difficult.
Right.
But I'm 100% on board doing it. Tell me what you need from me, and I'll get on board. I'll show up and help build the facility. I'll go to the facility and help do some of the maintenance when you need it. I will write a check once a month and get on board that way. Even if you wanted to go to every single church in town and say, hey, here's what we're doing. Okay, the best we can figure is that we have a population of 150 of these folks that are out there. And what we want to do is we want to build the facilities. We want to give them, a place to be able to live where they're safe. They're out of the rain. We can feed them. We can clean them, and that's what we're going to be able to do. Is it going to be a glamorous life? No, but it's better than living in a park, right? And begging for food.
Or all of the parks.
Yeah.
And the jail cell.
You got it. So this is what we're going to try to do. This is the budget that we see. We need to fix this. We're going to try writing grants. We're going to ask the state for money. Okay, maybe we can get some. That would be great. We're going to ask the county government to put a line item in the budget and hand us some money. We're going to ask all the churches to get together. But I don't see that the problem can't be fixed. What I see is that nobody's doing anything about it right now.
Yeah.
And Zach, I hate to say it, I'm not the guy for it.
Oh yeah,
Someone is.
But I already have all of my stuff that I'm doing too. That's just there's a population of people that I've run into that I just think to myself, boy, oh boy,
They need help.
I mean, that is and it's like I'm even thinking to myself while you're going through those 3 F's, like the faculty.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you could convince everyone, look, it's going to take 20 people a day to run this thing, but instead of trying to hire 20 people, it's like it'd almost be safer maybe to. And this is off the rails a little bit.
That's fine.
Environments and stuff. But like, if you were to tell all those churches also, and here's the other thing we need: we need 20 people from this church to volunteer for a 2-day period or whatever.
Sure.
Because these guys are so difficult. Your turnover rate working in there is going to be so high.
Yeah.
You're going to spend all of your time just trying to find new people to work there. But if you're like, look, I know it's going to be a tough night.
Yeah.
But give me a night. And then you just find 300, all sorts of things. But anyway, that's just, that's sort of the bottom of the barrel thing.
I'm going to tell you this, and I'm going to get political for a second. The first round of spending that we sent off to Ukraine that I heard about and looked into was $60 billion. $60 billion.
Yeah, sure.
To give you an idea, Zach, if you were to take the population of America, which I'm just for easy numbers will say is 300 million, it's a little higher.
Sure.
And let's assume that every single person in America, all 300 million, own a home.
Okay.
And every single one of them has a mortgage of, say, $200,000.
Okay.
Do you know what it would cost to pay off 300 million mortgages at a cost of $200,000?
I do not.
It would cost exactly $60 billion.
Really?
Yeah. We just sent that off to Ukraine and it's gone with no accountability. People don't know where it is. It's just one of the greatest money laundering scandals that we're never going to hear anything about. Our government is so stupid and wasteful. And I want to make sure that if anyone from our government is listening, I'm talking about you individually. You are so stupid and wasteful that you are the reason America is falling apart. Okay? There is money to take care of every problem under the sun. It is just that our government is so inept, such an absolute failure, that we squander all of the resources that we could use to solve all the problems in our country on fraud. Collectively as a society, in any state, in any county, and don't get me wrong, I understand some counties are much more poor and some are more affluent.
Yeah.
But as a nation, there is the money to fix that schizophrenic homeless problem we're talking about in this valley. We're not going to get money for it.
No.
But if the government wasn't taking it from us, or if the government would be willing to give it to a private entity in the form of a grant, I don't see that we couldn't, rally together and fix this problem.
Yeah, sure.
Now,
$60 billion.
Yeah, that was the first round. A lot more money's been given, and that doesn't even include the equipment that we've sent over.
Yeah, sure.
Basically, we are financing and arming a war with Russia. We are just not using U.S. troops to fight it. But we're paying for it, and we're giving them the planes and the bullets.
Second party.
Yeah. Yeah. So I personally have faith in the private sector to take care of problems. I do believe a lot of problems are going to be harder to take care of.
Sure.
Some problems are just, they're a lot sexier.
Making sure everybody has bread isn't that big of a,
yeah. But I have faith in it. And even if I didn't have great faith in the private sector, I've already witnessed what the government will do. And it doesn't do anything, or it does stuff very poorly. So I don't have faith in that because I've seen it fail for so many years. So a private sector solution is the only other option that we have. Now, it won't be perfect. It'll be clumsy. They'll make mistakes too. And that's what the government always uses to consolidate powers. Well, you let this one person slip through the cracks, so we're going to take over and make sure everyone is accounted for. And that's coming from a group that, you ready for this? Greater than 50% of children in foster care, ready? Are unaccounted for.
What do you mean unaccounted for?
I mean, the state doesn't know where they are on any given day. And that's not Patrick making something up. That is Patrick being told this by state Colorado employees who worked in that system. And they said, if you asked us to gather up all the kids on a given day because we needed them somewhere,
couldn't do it.
We would be able to gather up less than half.
Wow.
So I don't have, faith in that system. I have faith in the private sector, and I believe it could be done.
Because the accountability, that's what's working both ways too, right? If everything is done locally, but in private sector, when you start stealing money from that charity, and it's like, oh no, we know that guy that works here. We know where he spent the money to buy that car.
Yeah, we know where he lives. We
can get
him in jail.
That guy is in trouble. But yeah, once you go to this third party stuff, your issue.
Yeah, the stuff just gets lost. I'm not saying it would be neat and clean. Okay, when you're dealing with homeless people with schizophrenia, and that's just the big specific example we decided to come up with. It's not going to be an easy fix.
No.
But tell me that there's another option. There's the private or the public sector. That's it. If you think the public sector is doing a great job, then guess what? Stop worrying about it.
Right.
That guy in the park really isn't there, Zach, because the government's in charge. Don't worry about it. It's not calling. You don't need to. They're in charge.
The only other option would be you just pretend like it's not happening.
Yep.
That's what you get. And that's fine for a lot of people right up until the time when it's like he's sleeping in your car.
Yeah.
Or because then he exists.
The government solution to high schoolers not having a sufficient level of education to graduate is to drop the bar and say, well, now you only need this level to graduate. Well, guess what? Graduations went up. The number of kids going through high school went up. And we can say the same thing. If you make under this amount, you're poor. Well, if we want to eliminate poverty in America, just drop the line.
Yeah.
There you go. Move the goalposts, and all of a sudden it's like, hey, we eliminated 20% of poverty in 1 year by
with a pin stroke.
So, Zach, I'm going to tell you this. My grandfather, Joseph Francis Xavier Hayes.
Yes.
His dad was run over and killed in Brooklyn, New York, when he was about 9 years old. And this was, this was like World War I, or before that. This was when he was a kid, because my dad was born during World War II. So his mom, after the funeral, took him aside and said, you got to go to work tomorrow. You're not going to school anymore.
Yeah.
Because there was no public assistance. And he ended up walking down the street to the nearest factory. And he walked in, he said, hey, my name is Joe Hayes, and I need a job. And the men there knew what happened. They read the paper, and they said, okay, here's a broom. You're going to sweep the shop floor, and we'll pay you at the end of every day. So they gave him a job so he could support his family. So he went to work every day and supported his mom, his two sisters, and his two cousins who lived with him, two more girls, because one of their parents died and the other was an alcoholic who left and couldn't be accounted for.
Sure.
He got into sanitation and started working as a garbage man. Okay, when he got old enough, which I don't remember what the age was.
Yeah.
They would have groceries show up on their doorstep. When they would go to the butcher, the butcher would light the scale. He would give them twice as much meat as they would pay for. Everyone in the community, everyone in their local church, any family they had, everybody chipped in whatever way they could because everybody knew what was going on. The reason they did that was because there were no other options.
Sure.
There were three options. There was family, there was community, there was your church. That's it.
Yep.
There was no other place to get anything. So there wasn't any government to go to. My grandfather supported his mom and what he called his four sisters until all four of the girls grew up and got married and his mom died.
Yeah.
He was in sanitation the rest of his life. And by the time he retired, he was in charge of sanitation over all 5 boroughs of New York City. And the city of New York sent a limo and a chauffeur to pick him up and bring him to work every day. He had a 9-year-old education.
But he could work.
Yep. And he made it, and their family made it. And it was hard. It was very hard. And my father grew up in that house. And let me tell you, he did not get much slack as a kid. And then I grew up under his house, and I had the same thing. I had the same work ethic that was given to me. And it was hard, but it was good for all of us. And one thing I was talking to my wife about is going through hard times, going through very hard times. For the Christian, there is something that we have to look forward to. There's a hope at the end. And when we look back after heaven, the hard times that we had to go through for a brief period here on earth is really nothing at all. I'll tell you this, and I don't want to get into, modern monetary theory and the problem with the Federal Reserve, and when all of a sudden we could, get income taxes from Americans, and instead of just paying for the lights and the buildings and the bullets and salaries of the government, we could take that money from you and give it to somebody else, and thereby we could buy votes with it, and that's the whole purpose of welfare. It's not to help anybody. When welfare first came out, and this is my grandfather telling me the story, he said when the Great Depression was going on, they would fill fellas up in a bus, and they would drive them just outside of the city to somewhere in the country. And they'd get them in a field, and they'd get a busload of guys, and they'd get them out with shovels and pickaxes. And they would say, okay, we got to dig a ditch. It's got to be 12 feet wide, got to be 6 feet deep. It's going to be from here over there. And they'd bring them out there every day, 5-6 days a week. And these guys would be digging this ditch. And at the end of the week, they would pay them. And it was the city and the state that was doing this. And then the next week, they would have a different group, and they would bring them out to the same field, and they'd say, we need you guys to fill in this ditch. And they did that because nobody would take welfare.
They would work. They had to work for
they refused to take a handout.
Wow.
So the government had to come up with creative ways for these guys to work.
So they earn it.
Yep. That's what this country used to be like.
That's 100 years ago.
100 years
Less.
ago.
Yeah. Little more maybe.
Yeah.
100 years.
And nowadays, you have people who, no matter how much the government gives them, they feel entitled to getting more. And the idea was, what's our job? Well, our job is to make sure nobody starves and nobody dies of exposure. Well, I want more than that. Well, good for you. Go get a job.
Yeah.
And our job is to provide you with the minimum. We're going to keep you alive. We're going to. We're not even going to do as much as we do for prisoners nowadays. Okay.
Yeah.
But we are going to let you know that there is a brass ring out there, and you can get it, and you still have that opportunity in America. But we're not going to write a check for your entire lifestyle every day for the rest of your life.
Even though the widows and the sojourners in the Old Testament, the edges of the field weren't harvested, and all the sheaves that fell, but you had to go get them. Nobody was going to pack them up and bring them to you.
That's right.
Yep.
There was still some work for you to do. And it even explains that when you go through the New Testament about the widows that would be provided for. It said were the ones that were faithful.
Yeah.
The ones that they were members of the church. They showed up regularly. They helped out. They did what they could. And we were happy to do what we could.
Yes.
But the ideas of sitting at home, and playing Xbox and getting paid is nonsense. The idea that you don't have an Xbox or air conditioning, I don't care about. With that being said, if there is a family with kids that are good kids and the family loves God and they're, wonderful people and they can't afford presents for Christmas, which, I mean, we all know I hate Christmas.
Yeah,
right. If I can buy that family an Xbox and the parents are okay with it, I'd like to do that. Okay. Even though it's not what's needed, and I think it's way beyond what I'm required to do as a Christian.
Sure.
We still like doing those things because we're charitable people. But it's just so different, and I see it as a destructive thing. You don't feed the bears. And we've gotten to a point where Americans used to say, I will not take this money. I have to work for it. And that's all I want. I just want a job.
Yeah, right.
That's all I'm looking for. I just want a job, and I'm happy to work. To now we're at a point where, what can I get? There's no end. There is no amount that will satisfy me.
Oh, yeah. Because that bar keeps on moving, too. Right? That just keeps on going up. Yeah. I was like, I got this food to eat, but it's not Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
All right. Why can't I get that?
Yeah, it's hamburger. I want steak. I want pork chops. Do you know the last time my kids had a pork chop? I think they've had one in their life.
I don't think I remember.
Yeah. They're expensive.
Delicious. Yeah.
All right, man. We're past 2 hours. We better wrap this
we
up.
Did it. All right.
We broke the 2 hour mark. I don't know what the quality was, but we'll see.
I had fun.
Thank you very much for coming, and thank you everyone for joining us. You can join us here every Sunday night at 7 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Central. Please check us out on Facebook and YouTube. You can search Bible Thumper Podcast on either of those platforms. And if you're watching us live, you can certainly find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, any place you can find a podcast. You can look us up there, download it, share it, rate it, review it, pass it on to friends. It would help a lot. Okay, thanks for coming, Zach. Everybody have a good day. Bye-bye.
Whoo-wee.